Here's the famous poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And I see this as a metaphor for linear thinking, lateral thinking, and random thinking. Linear thinking, you will take the road that everybody else does. Lateral thinking, you will take the road less used. And random thinking, there ain't no road at all. And I tend to fit in the latter. Not lateral, the latter. I am a random thinker. I'm more like a tornado that touches down for a small while, creates a path, and then jumps to another area. I guess tornado is probably the best description, actually, considering some of the destruction and mayhem that I cause along the way, but that's another story. Anyways, I'm going to talk about linear versus lateral versus random thinking. And the latter is not lateral and can be very dangerous.
The GERA Foundation presents this series called Navigating Research.
This is what psychologists refer to as monkey brain. And I'm told from reading, from Googling, using my fingertips, let your fingers do the walking. It works in yellow pages, which no longer exist, and now the internet. Okay, but your mind basically, in this case, it's all about negativity, really. At least that's what I get the impression of this. And when I talk about random thinking, it's not negative. It's not negative. I live in a chaotic world. My mind is chaotic. I feel most comfortable when the world around me is chaotic. But it doesn't necessarily mean negativity. It just doesn't. Good ideas and bad ideas to me are the same. You have to have a good idea to recognize how bad the bad idea is. So good ideas and bad ideas are really just the same. They're just ideas. So I don't attach negativity to things. So maybe that's my defense mechanism. Maybe I do have monkey brain. Anyways, but I don't see this as entirely what I'm talking about. As I refer to random thinking, it's more of just lots of desperate ideas are jumping around in your head, and you start fixating on one or another or bouncing around, and eventually they sort of come together into some sort of a concept or idea, and you have to use certain tools. Now, the tools required to solve this idea called monkey brain are very similar to what I would use. So, you find things like you give yourself routines. You get up in the morning and you just process data. You just do random things that fit in with the idea of sort of fixing you to the ground, basically, setting you, and things like that. And of course, my moods will affect this as well. But anyways, those sorts of solutions are probably the same as what they do. They talk about meditation, what have you. Anyways, and the only other thing I can say about this, by the way, is I think humans would look really cool with a tail. We have a coccyx bone, but we have no tail. And I think that's a loss. I think humans would just look far more attractive with a tail. Always thought that. It's a strange, random thought, and it's not a negative thought. So just so you know. This is the road well traveled. This is the path most of you should take, especially young researchers. Really, stay the linear thinking course. Stay on that course. It'll get you through so many obstacles. It really will. It's the A to B to C. I mean, when I didn't even know, I couldn't even recite the English alphabet until grade 6. So I didn't understand the A to B to C part at all, literally. But yes, as it relates to science, yeah, following the well-trodden path of everybody before you and your contemporaries is always a good strategy to be successful, especially as a young researcher. It really is. Referees absolutely hate when people diverge from these paths because they have a preconceived idea of what they think is right and good and correct, and they will follow that. And I say that with care because they really are trying to make your papers better. They really do. But there are moments where, I really believe we should inject some kind of, imagination into our papers. We lack that. And it takes a bit of the fun out of it, really, if you ask me. So follow what everybody else is doing. Take the well-traveled path. Use linear thinking whenever possible, especially as it relates to writing papers. This is the road less taken. This is what lateral thinking represents, the road less taken. Really, lateral thinking is just glorified linear thinking, except you've changed the rules. Now, in order to change the rules, you have to understand the rules of the game you're playing in the first place. So lateral thinking helps you to do that. But if you have a really good grasp of what the laws of nature are and the rules that are applied to whatever you're doing in your science craft, then you can adjust them and then you're able to explain them. And then referees may be willing to accept your argument, and that leads to new discovery, new science, new modeling, new all sorts of things, new theory, etc. But you really do want to understand. You really want to have a very good grasp. And this can be a very fun experiment using lateral thinking. And as a young researcher, probably not the case. Stay with linear. But as you get a little bit better, a bit more experienced, you have a bit more comfort with what referees expect from you, etc., and how you can explain things, and your better grasp of what the topic you're studying, this is the next part of your evolution, is to get to this stage here. And this is where you're going to have lots of fun and find really cool things and come up with really new and interesting ideas that you can in turn give to even younger graduate students who will replace you in the pecking order of science. You know, you start off as a lowly grad student and you work up to a postdoc and eventually a professor. And then you just become an emeritus eventually. Or in my case, you skip past all that to just unemployed and silly. So anyways, yeah, this is lateral thinking, the road less taken. And it's best used in presentations in particular, because you can excite the audience and maybe convince some of them of your ideas, and more important, get many of them thinking, and they may talk to you. It can be used in papers, but be very careful. Very careful. Referees will question you all the way, especially if they are stuck in lateral thinking, linear thinking mode. So, lateral thinking is the road less taken. Beware. And this is my favorite because this is me. This is off-roading. I even own a Jeep. And I've never taken it off-road, just so you know. But off-roading and random thinking are synonymous because there are no rules, right? There's no speed limit. There's no speed limit on that dusty trail that Jeep is on. Nothing. So you're not following any set pattern or set laws or set regulations or set rules to a game. None of that. So no linear or lateral thinking. You're just beyond all that now. And this has its place in science. It really does. It really does. There's two areas where it has its place in science. The first is in idea generation. And basically, you can come up with really bizarre and cool ideas if you think randomly, because you jump all over the place. But sometimes most of those ideas are worthless. You got to throw them out. But every now and then you'll generate an idea worth following its line of logic for research purposes. And actually, if you want to get across the knowledge gap quicker, if there's an obstacle in science or whatever, we all talk about the knowledge gap. But linear thinking is like throwing a pebble into the gap and filling it up very slowly. It'll work. It'll take a long time. Lateral thinking is kind of like taking a dump trucks and trying to fill it up. It speeds up the process, but again, it's going to take time. Random thinking really is a form of serendipity because you'll just hit on an idea. You just hit on an idea, completely random. You were thinking about something else and you got this. That's serendipity. So random thinking really can lead to serendipity. And in my case, I think about serendipity a lot. So for monitoring especially, you're doing long-term monitoring, looking for something new and interesting. So I try to design my programs to find serendipity. I make them serendipitous, for lack of a better word. Okay? And that's what random thinking can do. So in terms of getting over the knowledge gap, coming up with new ideas for your students, random thinking really works. Hard to do, but really works. The second area, and the area I think most scientists least focus on, and maybe I'm wrong there with the new generation, but certainly my generation and older, they paid less interest, and that is public speaking. When we present to the public and we can excite them and get them entertained and have them, go away satiated and knowing something. So if we entertain them and while we're educating them, I call it edutainment, then we're winning. And if the public likes what we're doing, and that includes government officials, by the way, then we're likely to get more funding. Okay? So, and having said that, I've seen people give perfectly horrible presentations. The absolute worst. I watched one in Washington, D.C. once of a guy who raised $10 billion for CERN. He was the worst speaker I have ever heard in my entire life. He had a strong accent. He spoke with his back to the public that he was presenting to, including government officials. He mumbled. His slides were completely opaque. They were filled with words, and you couldn't follow any of it. You couldn't read it fast enough. And so you do stuff like that. No. And yet he got funding. He got funding. I don't know how. Anyways, but my point is that's a no-no. So, but we need to get we need to make the general public aware of what we do. In the 1800s, we would have been rock stars. We would have showed up to give a colloquium, and all of the esteemed members of high society would have showed up in London, England, to listen to our tales of discovery of the dark skies of Southern Africa or wherever the heck we did our observing. But today, not so. And I think that's where we fall down. And I hope the next generation has done a better job than I. They seem to be, because they're just better at presenting. They're more savvy with, to make things cool and interesting, and more so than I was, that's for sure. Anyways, so those are the two areas that random thinking really helps. There's two areas where it doesn't help, and one of them is related to speaking again. If you're speaking to your colleagues at a conference, don't do this. Don't go off-roading. Don't do it, because you'll lose them. They're there for a specific reason. They want to hear the content of your talk. They want to know the intricacies of how you did your observing and the results that came from it and where it may lead. They don't care about the off-roading. They don't care about the random, okay? So don't do it for them. So don't do that. And the second one is when you're writing a paper and you're referees, that is a no-no. Referees do not accept, do not know, and will not submit and publish. So, two areas of this that you don't use off-roading. Don't use random thinking. Here's Johnny. Okay, so to summarize the processes of linear versus lateral versus random thinking, they each have their own value. They really do. At a party, random thinking is amazing. Coming up with cool ideas, random thinking is perfect. But writing papers, no. The referees will hate you, okay? Follow the linear process in writing the papers. Doing the actual science itself, better to follow the lateral processes, because it'll at least be grounded in science. But most important in this video, if you do think like I do, find a routine that focuses you, that helps you ground in the moment and allows you to solve the problems at hand. And as I said, in my case, I tend to be all over the place, but I give myself a routine, and I'm always thinking about a particular problem. So I've got an idea, an end goal in mind, and all of my random thoughts tend to be moving towards that end goal. So in my case, I can organize, okay? You just got to find your own, and that's what I would say. So in science, they all have their place. Linear to lateral to random thinking, all have their place. You just got to balance them. And but I got to tell you something. Random thinking is dangerous. And if you're not comfortable with it, don't do it. You will be literally put in a nut house. Literally. It's just not cool.
The GERA Foundation will produce more videos like this. Please like, share, or subscribe if you enjoyed this video.